The preliminary plan, yeah,
The update from, I haven't seen it.
so we'll have to look into that. And regarding this, the stormwater separation, mitigation, all that stuff, Paul said he would meet, Paul Gay would meet with the Washington County Sewer District this week. And then follow that up with a discussion with DEC regarding that offset of 4-to-1 to allow us to send wastewater to Washington County Sewer District. So the project is, well, pending these progress plans, is in pretty good shape. And we're looking to develop an RFP for the next phase, which is the final plans and the construction. And I think Mr. Holmes is working on that. I was going to get in touch with him and see what I could do to help out. I have a number of templates for that. I think we have some. I don't know.
Yeah, Beth was gonna look at what she had. I'll look at my own.
Right. So
I still owe the board a proposal myself, but that's.
But anyway, so we'll work on that. Hopefully this phase will come to conclusion in the near future.
When this phase comes, is that the funding is just for this phase? Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Good point.
But it's not the entire funding. You might recall the funding is $950,000. We're only thinking of a portion of it to advance the engineering to get things ready for bid contracts.
Okay.
Right.
So we don't need the full 950 for that.
For this, yeah.
We're expecting a much lower, a much lower number.
Yeah. So we'll solicit proposals from some other firms. I'm not sure. We haven't decided whether we want to stick with Labella or not, based on some of their past performance or lack thereof. But we'll determine that in the future. The village of Fort Edward has a 400,000 gallon tank that we're going to take a look at, possibly to use.
The RFP goes out, accepted, is it then another grant to fund it, or is it our money to fund it?
Well, we have the HUD grant of $950,000 can fund that.
That will fund the construction.
That will fund the engineering. The second part of it is the part of construction to be funded by $950,000. The other one is we're applying for Fast New York program for $4 million.
Right.
So that should give us enough to complete construction.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea of the cost for $4.5, $5 million?
The cost, I would say it's no more than a couple of million, maybe 2 to 3. I don't think it's.
I saw sewer about $2 million.
RFPs, one being for the
Correct.
final design, the permit level drawings to go to construction, and then potentially a second RFP or a second part of it for the
Right.
construction phase services themselves.
Right. And that
It'll have to be, but until we get the approval of Fast New York or
Yeah.
another program, we can't put that RFP out because no way we start.
correct.
But as long as we got detailed and everything else locked up, we're all set. We're ahead of the game.
Are we responsible for any of that water separation,
Yeah.
stormwater
We did.
separation cost?
There may be. We have, Beth's put together a very good financing package for that. Not financing, grant package for that, so we won't know until spring or June next year whether or not those have been awarded. No, maybe December on some of them. I think there's 3 different programs there, but they think they got what she says, like they say, is a pretty sweet package put together, so we'll see.
Right. And we need updated seeker.
Maybe not. Maybe not. They talked to ESD yesterday. ESD said that what the concern is about the site. This is sort of a backward situation. That we've already, a lot is already developed. Normally doing a site there, they just want to see that there has been the phase one's done, the investigations done.
Yeah.
The consent decree for the entire site and CEC did WL in phase one and then expanded phase one. And so they think that those will suffice to get a final answer for that, but that was good news since we don't have to do another seeker on that site.
Right.
Because there's 2 seekers, one for HUD grant, but not one for HUD grant,
NEPA for HUD, right?
NEPA for HUD, but we need a
Seeker
seeker
for
too.
Fast New York.
But there's another one for Best New York.
Is
There's
that
2
full-
seekers reported.
Full environmental.
Probably. But if we have these other 2 studies, that they're more complete than any seeker would be done. Full environmental would be done.
It's been a well studied area.
Yeah. So we will meet again with Labella a week from today
Mhm.
at 1:30. I don't know if you want to get into a little bit of the schedule yet now or regarding the RFP and such.
It's not done
I was told November, but okay.
Getting fun.
No, I guess, talking schedule for a moment was for the RFP, having it ready for November, figuring out exactly the 30-day timeframe. Seems like releasing RFP late winter 2020. Well, I guess that would be early 25, and then, figuring out construction early summer, spring, summer, fall, something along those lines.
One of the questions came up and Dan referred to it is that in doing the final design documents, any firm that we rebid to is going to want to go back and do their same work over again.
Mhm.
So the question is, how much duplication is there? And, is it going to cost an extra $200,000 because they're going to go back and redo a lot of the preliminary design and VODs? Again, just to get their comfort level was done right. So the question is that are we safer going with Labella, who's already done that information and a lot of those studies and the flow studies and everything else like that? Because I certainly don't want to repay. I certainly don't want to
Yeah,
pay again for what we've already done, right? We already did in a certain way with Weston Sampson. So,
And that should fall out in the bid process because will be more competitive because it's already going out.
they
They
should,
should already have the efficiencies.
Correct.
they should have the quote inside track, but
well, I think that between Bob and Dan is that you sit down and look at what's being bid out and see what's already been done, because you can pretty well tell what they're going to want to go back and be done. If not, you can ask someone I don't know, it's an experienced engineer was saying, someone who was more in tune with what's going on.
Mhm.
You might even want to ask, Jason, not Jason. Kevin Gorman, or Washington County, whether or not where he's sitting.
Mhm.
Or even Joe Grilling. Joe Grilling probably would look at that and see. Or someone else that says, hey, you're gonna have to redo all this. And you can estimate what it's gonna be based on what we've already paid, so, you know, we may come to decision points, we wanna eliminate that and not go, bother go RFP. Well, that's something that we should consider.
I do know some of it for myself, writing the RFP is I do want to see the final deliverable. So under the current change order 4 with Labella. And
Which is due at the end of September.
correct, which is at the end of September. And then also it seemed to me, I know there's been discussions with the DEC, but I don't have a firm understanding myself from what's been reported on what truly that interaction has involved. And get a sentiment of what is DEC ready to bite onto it and sign off once they have those final documents.
Okay. There we are, up to date on that, I think. Anything else? New leaf update.
There's a lot churning on this one, not affected, not really involving New Leaf, but as you know, New Leaf is looking at a solar installation somewhere on Airport Industrial Park Phase 2. They're running into issues associated with wetlands, as are we with some other initiatives. So this is something that I feel we should group discussion, particularly between Bob and Kara, because there's the technical issue of what's delineated as wetlands, and there's a legal issue.
I'm so confused.
There's a legal issue as far as the deed restrictions. So there's a lot churning here, and it's not just New Leaf, but it's with the park as a whole, quite honestly, in our main parcels.
And those are deed restrictions concerning.
Well, it's the deed restrictions and what they say about solar
Oh.
and wetlands. And so maybe, Kara, I know this is a fun one. You want to provide your.
Yeah,
opinion?
so there seems to be a discrepancy on a couple of topics what I'm gauging from the emails that are very wordy, by the way. So,
Well, the emails are wetland consultants, Army Corps of Engineers. I mean, there's all sorts of emails flying around this, so it's.
so we've got the original set of restrictions, then we've got the new ones that we've done. It's our position that the new ones supersede the old ones, but there's no actual language to that effect. So when New Leaf was doing their application or due diligence with Army Corps sent back and said, no, this is prohibited because of these restrictions. And then we said, well, what restrictions are you talking about? And they forwarded us the original restrictions. So the first issue is that we're trying to confirm whether or not the newer ones are superseding, and we're all on the same page with that. The second piece, how I am understanding it, is that specifically the lots that are defined as restricted properties. So this is a term that's used in the declaration, restricted property. If you read that definition, it encompasses the entire lot. It doesn't specifically say. So we're trying to get clarification from them as to, did you really intend for us to restrict the entirety of these lots or certain portions thereof, or?
The survey map is portions thereof.
Right.
And that's what the written description is as well.
Right. And then, but the acreage adds up to all the acreage of restricted property totals the lots.
I didn't pick up on that one. Okay.
So that is what I think that and it says it doesn't. So then apparently Army Corps has taken a position that solar can go on wetlands and they've approved it in other places. So when we reached out to the town of Kingsbury to have, on a totally other issue, to have some of our properties out of the water district, they said, well, aren't you trying to put a solar there? And I talked to Tom Kingsbury's attorney and I said, well, Army Corps is telling us we can't. And then, so that kind of created like a third leg of this whole situation. And I don't feel like we've gotten a clear
said that he thought John Connell was still there, is just in another division, but that's neither here nor there. So I've talked to Dustin, I can't remember his last name, Dustin, is it Dorr? Whatever,
He's a new guy, just.
Yeah,
clarification for people who are.
So he's trying to pick up the pieces and get fresh with the,
So he couldn't find some of the documentation. I sent him the case numbers. He said, that's great, fine, thank you. Then I again talked to him, I've talked to him 3 or 4 times about what it was. He says, what was the project? I said, there was no project. What happened was that Kubricki Construction came and was looking at some of the property with potential, thinking about doing some storage there and different things with their equipment. And they called on the Corps engineer to get termination. That just happened to be our friend John Connell. And John said, no, you got to do a delineation. So that's why we started building the delineation all the way through there. And then yesterday he called me, he said, I've got some research. He says preliminary, he says, I don't see where there was any intention to restrict the uplands, any uplands. He said, but I don't know that for sure. And I said, well, the second thing is also which applies, 2003 or 2022 deed restriction. He said, well, that should have been determined. I said, well, we were told by one of the engineers that they didn't want to go through the pain and length of sending it up. There's only certain people getting access to it. So he was still researching it. We talked yesterday. He says, well, send me these data, these documents, and Steve George got them back to him within yesterday. So can you access it, Chair?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Do you access the wetlands map?
Yes.
Are we connected to this TV or is that?
We're not connected to TV. No.
Are you on?
So, I mean, this is actually halfway simple and in there. So the first thing is that we have this area here, which is what I call the North 40.
Mr. Chairman, just for some new people in the room, can you just point where air angiodynamics is and the airport, just so people get a reference?
Over here,
Okay, that's,
this is Casey Road, Queensbury, which turns into Town Line Road. And then it goes across and comes out somewhere on, oh God, what's the name of the road? Ridge, comes out on Ridge. So that's the orientation, that's on the corner. This is phase 2. So these are the lots. These lots by agreement, because they were destroyed by our own mistake, We did some logging in there. And when we were doing logging, there were skids in there. And the skids dug deep ruts, which is put ruts through the property. So what filled in with water, making this fairly expensive to ever develop, ever want to develop it. And usable area, I mean, here's a lot. The gray is where can everyone see this? The gray is where the wetlands are in here. This was designed to be the access road to come in through here. That was never designed to be developed because of the amount of wetlands there. But wetlands have expanded here and have kept on expanding since this map occurred. So these properties are off limits for development. They'd be way too expensive to develop. So we've talked about this before. We will still, we ask for these to be taken out. That's what the pushbacks we're getting from them, is that they've asked Bob Holmes to come to the September 18th planning board meeting and talk to them about it. I will also be there to fill in the color. But so this is useless to us. If we end up still paying the sewer and water tax on this, I mean, that's probably about $3,000-4,000 a year in perpetuity if we can't do something with it. My suggestion always has been, is if there's not there, why don't we just take this land? There's a gentleman over here who would like to take that property over. And the only thing he wants to do, he wants to make a forest preserve. He wants to make a preserve for animals. He doesn't want hunting or anything else in there. And by doing that, he can post it and it'll be his own property. So that's the first thing. I would also, if we don't do that, I would also combine all these lots into one property. Combine all lots on the property, you always have that first amount for it's taxable. The rest is based on I don't remember the formula for sewer and water, but a lot of it's based on water usage. Well, if we don't have any water usage or sewer usage there, you know, that reduces it to the moot point. So then we have this area, the mitigation area. Mitigation area happened, 20 years ago, 25 years ago.
Yes.
Probably before Kara was out of high school. Did you compliment?
That was nice, but
So
untrue though.
you didn't have to destroy it. So this was a mitigation for the runway extension they were going to do over at the water, over at the airport, extension of the runway. That never happened. We got paid $160,000 to make this a constructed wetlands. Okay, so that lot is what's constructed wetlands. That's forbidden ever. Wetlands have expanded on this lot, which is lot 34, 33, have expanded there. Those lots are pretty well unusable.
And let me just jump in, Mr. Chairman, just say that was the original area New Leaf was looking at, because they're under impression that solar would go on these type of wetlands. And later we learned a different opinion on that.
Well, there's probably about 6 more opinions we had done. So again, my recommendation is really to combine these lots. I mean, there's no one's going to want this lot. I mean, I'll approach Dennis Kelly next door and see if he wants those areas, but guess what the answer is. Deed restrictions will still apply in there, but I recommend combining those into one lot. And then there are 2 lots here, which there's very little usable space down there. I would recommend combining these 2 lots together, so at least reducing the lot size. But I still want to get through getting this damn thing clarified. It is great that Dustin is being very conscientious on this. He should be able to fall through those documents quickly. But again, he said that from what he's seen already, there was no intent to restrict these wetlands or these uplands. I'm sorry. There was no intent there. So, I mean, here we are approximately, I don't know, $60,000 into delineation that we
So-
redid maps based on count.
Shavings place is right here, right?
Equistock is right.
Equistock is there. So from there on, it's undeveloped, but these are,
This lot 32 is developable. There's very little wetlands there. These lots 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20 are developable. There are wetlands on them, but they shouldn't do that. These are actually lower. These are lower elevation here, and the water sort of the elevation sort of goes down from here. So these lots are developable. New Leaf wanted to put solar on those. We don't know if we can do it yet or not. So that's what we're looking at. So,
The other thing I point out is that all those lots are serviced by 4 utilities. We have water, sewer, electricity and gas, just right where Dave's
right
pen is,
there.
ending right there.
So
So it's very, it's very attractive for light manufacturing.
my goal would be find someone who wants to take this area over. And they could do what they want. We wouldn't have to put a road in. They'd be responsible for the road to get to their property. So we'll see, but that's what we look at. So that's where we stand at this point. I'm getting close. I'm gonna call the guy to see if he wants his property because I don't see any reason for us to hold it. It'd go to ag land.
Where would you cut that line? Just like that north line?
Well, there's a
straight?
line here. It comes down, it goes down, it comes over.
Yeah, we do have a proposed line that's there currently.
Yeah, we should have, we would probably need to do lot line adjustment or get an
Yes.
easement from anyone. Get an easement to use this from whoever realizes his property, because this road goes actually with this piece of land here. All the way through there. So
One of the questions might be is if it's an adjoining lot owner, does he want an easement? If he says he doesn't want an easement, just let him take the land and he's got other alternative access. That would be if you ended up having either a single owner of 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 26, say, that could be, you can almost abandon the paper road there as well, if that was combined.
but this is part of this lot here. This lot goes down the road.
Yeah, but you
Yes,
can accept it now.
it's a lot line adjustment,
Okay,
Yeah.
well, we'll work on that.
but that would be something to negotiate with the neighboring owner.
Yeah, if they have other access to a road,
I would suggest not give it to them.
yeah.
Correct.
And the other thing I was thinking about is that maybe one of the neighbors might want some of this property too, but maybe Dennis would want some of this property.
Right?
Do we have to keep, maintenance of the culvert going over into the
No,
neighbor's property?
no,
What,
it's town.
what's that?
The town is responsible for this road. They took over this road.
They've taken over up to Equistock currently.
Isn't there a little dam, a little impoundment for the wetlands?
Yes, and that's one of the things I think we're gonna need to answer, as you talked about the. Needs to understand that those water control structures are important to maintain the water level in that reconstructed wetland.
So that's a story here. I want everyone to think about it. We'll talk about it. We should have more information. Shit, that meeting's on the 18th, right?
Our board meeting,
No, what state's the next planning board meeting?
in Queensbury? Well, it's
Queensbury.
Kingsbury.
Kingsbury, I think it is
want
the
you to go to
18th.
the Town board, right? Didn't he say town board? Or did he say?
That could be, maybe it was a town board, yeah.
It's the 18th, whatever meeting it is, it's the 18th that he requested.
Jeff?
Yeah,
I think it's the planning board,
oh, okay.
because I spoke with
No,
Bob.
George
Dignan.
is going to the planning board on the 12th, isn't he?
I
12th brings a
that.
developer to planning board.
We'll look it up.
I think it's 12th of the planning board. I think you're right. The 18th is the town board meeting. It was the town board that had the questions. 'cause
Yeah.
Jeff came in. Okay,
Fourth Thursdays, planning board.
we
No,
got the 12th.
third Wednesdays for planning board, fourth Thursdays on.
Well, I got planning board on the 12th. George,
I think it is the 18th. George is planning on going to that meeting.
the 18th is the town board meeting.
Town
Yeah,
board
Craig
meetings on the first
indicated.
and third Mondays.
So the 18th.
Unless holiday.
Well, it was a holiday, so The 12th.
No, they did some changing, because Jeff specifically told me
Third Wednesday can't be the 12th.
the,
No.
No, the town board meeting.
I think
Board
they
meeting.
canceled their first meeting of the month this time. I'll confirm with Jeff, but he told me the 18th for sure. And I don't know what their schedule changed, but he. Yeah, it said okay, so it says their first meeting of the month may be rescheduled, so I don't know if that was rescheduled or not, that would have been for
Okay. Well,
yesterday or Tuesday.
more to develop. We might not even have the information for him to go and talk about it from Army Corps of Engineering.
Yeah.
So. Okay, so that's elimination.
So back to the original, so New Leaf is,
Well, there's, I don't think we shut the door on New Leaf yet, because if there's positive feedback.
Percent uplands. I don't know if they do 100% wetlands. My guess is they'd let 100% wetlands go if we could. But we still need a determination from Army Corps which set of restrictions apply.
One thing New Leaf did say to me is that they're looking at 4 megawatt as opposed to 5 megawatt, and 5 is a magic threshold.
Yeah.
And I think the reason for 4 is because of the criteria with Kingsbury, about 50%, how much they can fit on the lands that they're looking at. But it's a little bit of to be determined after the delineation of the wetlands and the deed restriction are verified.
Okay,
The one question I had on that is Kingsbury's asking for the solar to be partially in wetlands?
That's part of
No.
the.
They're-
Law.
They're saying that if we want to have the parcels removed from the water district
and sewer
and
district.
sewer district. But they only have control over the water, so if we are making that request, the town board has taken the position that solar is a use that should not be exempt from the water district. So they don't want to remove those parcels if we intend to have solar on those lots. And then running simultaneously with that argument is the argument that they're saying Army Corps has made determinations in other projects that have allowed the solar to go on wetlands. So what's the issue here? There was like a disconnect. So the town board was thinking, Army Corps has approved this before. Why is the IDA trying to have these parcels removed if they plan on putting solar there? We don't want to take them out if there's a plan for solar. So then I talked to Jeff and I explained to him the scenario we have with Army Corps saying, pulling these original restrictions and telling us there's no development at all. So that kind of resolved the issue. Their understanding of where we're coming from, because it was kind of like they were understanding us to say, we want to be out of the water district, but we still are planning to put solar there. And they're saying, we're not going to do that. We're not going to remove the property from the water district if you intend to have solar. And their understanding was that we would be permitted to have it. So that's
So
what
this is
that,
kind of negotiations.
that's kind of where that disconnect came from, that they didn't realize that we had this other ongoing discussion that kind of stemmed from New Leaf making that request and then Army Corps saying
There's a
no.
lot of moving parts.
Yeah, there's like, it's all, it's a wonderful topic.
And the reason for it staying in district is for tax base.
Right, so they're also, that's what they're looking at. They're looking at if they, town board removes these parcels, what's the impact on the remaining parcels, the tax and tax impact. So they're, I'm assuming, reluctant to remove them unless there's some.
Do we know what the benefit tax is just for those parcels?
I mean, I don't know how much
Oh,
we,
well, that-
Yeah, there's no usage, it's just a district benefit tax, so.
$3,000 spread over.
the taxes are actually substantial.
Are they really?
Actually substantial. When I looked and calculated the numbers by pulling out the properties we want to pull out, we'd save the IDA about $10,000 a year.
He's talking about the whole site, he's talking about the whole site as opposed to just the solar. I think you guys are talking about the solar site only, the point being, the whole site, it adds up, that's the point.
Yeah, for whatever lots the idea wishes to pull out. Okay, so it adds up more than, okay, it adds up to more than whatever.
Site.
How big's the district though? Because you spread that over the whole district, that may not be much to the.
Kingsbury Water District, they just, it's not huge.
They
Okay.
just consolidated it with sewer district ones.
No. Water District, two different things.
Oh, okay, got it. I'm sorry.
I don't remember exactly how they have it formulated there, but there is a discount, there's basically a center part of town that they have a water district, and then this west side that I think is fairly close to limited to into the industrial park, so it may be a little more dramatic impact than just.
So their position is they don't want to get rid of sewer unless we get rid of water too.
right,
I
right,
wouldn't mind paying the water because water is
right.
$100 a year, something like that. Now they can tell me better, but the sewer is the one that gets expensive.
Right, they want to keep them the same thing. If we're in on one, we're in on both.
Clear as mud, right?
No. That's something else.
I had a pretty map there, I forgot. That's okay. So that's that. And then yesterday, Mr. Holmes sent a bond.
Wasn't his fault.
I didn't say it was his fault. It was my fault for letting me do it.
I have ones to share.
Okay, so the topic we're going to now is both by George.
Yeah, actually, I don't know.
So,
Just
Airport
pass it.
Industrial Park
Pass it
Phase
around.
1, this is the southernmost portion of the Airport Industrial Park, where we own a very large parcel, and within it is a parcel owned by the Washington County Sewer District. So there's the precursor. Well, Mr. Holmes, you want to go? I know this.
Well, the discussion we've had obviously is the negotiations with both by George that the chairman shared with me at one point that typically when selling a parcel, it's based on the amount of usable uplands or usable or developable land. And I was tasked to try to come up with what is a reasonable number for usable land. And when I walked the parcel, I could clearly see as just a dumb engineer that things were a little wetter than I thought they were. And I suggested we bring North Country out to do a quick cruise. I identified the area kind of at the end of a flag lot here, the access road, that we were probably going to have a strip through here, which they did pick up on it. The one that really surprised me is out in the middle of the meadow itself. And that's really the middle of the meadow. That's the prime area that I think is what made it attractive for George Pencil. Then we knew we had the ravines kind of behind Roselle, and then the Tech Warehouse properties. They're in that. There's two swales. But there's a little more than I realized. Just so you know, this is more of a preliminary cruise, just a quick walkthrough from NCAS to make this determination. If we were to get into this further, to truly identify what's going on with the property, what truly is the potential for development. We start getting into more moving parts that if we wish to disturb wetlands to facilitate access or improve development areas, there's obviously cost associated with either reconstructing wetland elsewhere, whether that is IDA property or it had been proposed by NCES that there's a couple of wetland banks out there by groups such as Ducks Unlimited, and I don't recall the other name that they used, that there could be some buy-in to, and the buy-in being if we disturb wetland here, Ducks Unlimited would construct wetland elsewhere. And the going price that Steve George thought it was yesterday was about $94,000 an acre.
Just certification on the reconstruction. We could do that on our own land too, could we not? If we
Potentially.
talk about Airport Industrial Park 2 and what we just went through and. some parcels.
That's one of those moving parts that I would want to bring Steve in because he's much more versed on that than I am.
The point being is we don't have to do a third party for that wetlands. We have options perhaps to explore utilization of. our-
Right, and David mentioned that to me yesterday when we were speaking on the phone, that the thought is, when we talk about Dave's North 40, that we know the wetland is growing out there now, is there a bit of negotiations to be had with the Corps of Engineers that says, hey, we're already making wetlands because of past errors, faux pas, what have you. Could we use that as credit for something of this nature? That's a very preliminary, just a thought off the top of my brain. It's no guarantee that something of that nature is viable, but I think it's at least worth an ask.
Well, then ask, but if we go back to, my mind is cluttered with useless data sometimes. Sometimes it comes up there. When we look at this constructed wetlands, that was like $120,000 way back 20 years ago to construct wetlands over there. So, here's a question. We had talked to George about $10,000 an acre.
Usable acre.
Well, yeah, so, at the most, we're gonna get $50,000 or $60,000 out of this. If we have to construct wetlands in order to sell this, is it our best interest to do it? If it costs us $100,000 to sell $50,000, I don't know what the worth it is. So, constructing wetlands, I don't know what the process is. Bob and Steve George, who's our hydrologist, would know better. But, we're all of a sudden upside down.
I mean, part of it is, I don't know, is a potential buyer would have a toleration for taking that task on themselves and negotiate a sale price accordingly. And what would the tolerance of the board be to sell it at a potentially significant discount?
Well, it sat there for 50 years. We haven't sold in 50 years. This is the first opportunity I've known of that anyone's interested in it. New Leaf looked at it for solar. They didn't think it fit over there for what they needed to do.
Right.
So, the question is that, do we hold the property or approach George Council and say, hey, here's a hell of a deal for you? We have to talk to George anyway.
I would expect he would have some questions, and it may come down to at least some of the preliminary work, such as what's been done now, is maybe what delineation does get completed so he can make a determination. Obviously, that's an expense, at least under present ownership of the IDA, an expense of the IDA.
And not to mention, he's still dealing with the Washington County Sewer District on the other lot. That's going to be the primary, and then this will be secondary. So that is a factor too.
Right, that if he can't ultimately get everything, is that initial 2 acres and change attractive?
I'll flip this around. He wanted both properties.
Yes,
Correct.
If we take this out, does he still want that property?
exactly. That's
2 acres, you could
my
probably
question.
gain another, I'm guessing another acre here.
Maybe.
Maybe,
Yeah.
so he's up to about 3 acres. If you do look here, there is wetlands here. Looks like does this mean there's some wetlands encroaching here too? Those dark areas? And
Yes.
so there are wetlands encroaching in that.
Yeah, I mean, just so you know, he did not specifically I did not specifically task him with the sewer district lot.
This will make sense because Bond Creek goes through that corner.
Right.
I thought this was too high, so, he may not have any interest in it. We do walk to him, but is a general consensus here? Talk to George, see what he thinks, and he may abandon this. If we give it to him for $1, we're still better ahead, in my opinion. I wouldn't want to go that low, but I'm just saying that you know, here's a piece of property paying sewer and water taxes on.
Will benefit to us.
So it does get him started. What he initially wanted is right there, right? And then expansions and years later.
Phase one, phase two.
Yeah, I like getting it off. And then part one needs to go. Can't have part four unless we get a part, part one and two.
For the board, if he wants to do that, it'd have to be his own dollar. I can't recommend the idea, invest any more money in delineation for that.
I have to leave. I think we're pretty much done. Okay.
I'll cover your part for you.
Okay. Thank you.
So,
It's the same bond Creek that goes past the canal side.
Yes.
Bond Creek starts way up in here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, it comes right around. Where the hell are we?
It bites the idea in the butt at both ends.
Here goes. It starts right here. Starts right in here, keeps on flowing down through that canal, it keeps on, that culvert area, keeps on going down through. So that's it, but the Percy board, we'll have a discussion with George, see what George wants to do. He may say, screw it, he may say, I'll have to do an evaluation, but I don't think we should pay for another delineation. Because how much is that, another $5,000-6,000?
Could be.
I think I'll have another discussion with Steve and George and just say, you know, walk me through the process of what it would take, because I got a feeling that might be something that George might ask, and if we can at least convey to him, you know, this is what you would be looking at.
So, okay. Any objections to that process?
So,
Okay. Anything else? Anything else? Got
No.
Ally? Public comments? We are adjourned. Thank you very much. I'm even more depressed today.